We'll gather lilacs in the spring.
The M Jam from London Theatre Players present Death of a Diva, a murder mystery presented in 5 acts. Act 1, The Death.
When you come home.
Hasn't she a sublime voice? Well, striking. Her concerts are sold out for the next 6 months. I'm not what you'd call musical myself, but it's what the audience want these days. Is it? I did hear your theatre's struggling. Well, we haven't put on a decent play all year, that's true. It's just concerts and poetry readings these days. Brilliant! Bravo! Encore! Really? Oh, yes. Was I all right? Perfection. Such a sentimental song, but they seem to like it. They love it. They love you. Indeed. Bravo. Ah, Mr. Lively, did you feel the wind? I'm sorry. Someone left the stage door ajar. I could feel the cold air all down my right side. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'll speak to Lionel. He's not supposed to leave it unattended. I wish you would. I'd hate to lose anyone their job. One has to be so careful with the voice, you see. It's my instrument. Of course. It won't happen again, Miss Arrimond. I shall rest now. Be a dear, Arthur, and call me after an hour and a half. I shall have a light meal before the second house. Some eggs, a tiny piece of bacon, some bread fried lightly, and maybe a tiny morsel of tomato. Afternoon performances are always disconcerting. Absolutely. Rest now, bella voce. And do remind Signor Pagini that the notes are there to be hit, not knocked unconscious. Poor Pagini. He's only got one song. Yes, but it is a duet. A poor performance from him reflects on Madam. Hadn't you better speak to the doorman? It was a phone call, sir. You say urgent, they said, for Mrs. Merriman. I was only gone a minute, and now comes back and finds the back door open. It wasn't longer than a minute, Mr. Ively, I swear. No, I don't suppose it was. Just lock it next time if you have to leave. Oh, I won't leave again. That caller rang off anyway. Mrs. Merriman wasn't half cross. She'd been in the middle of mending one of her frocks for tonight. Madame Petunia, or whatever she calls herself. Mending her dresses for her. Well, it is why I employ her. Costumes and such. Costume? It's her own frock, not the theatre's. Why don't we have no proper plays no more, sir? Market forces, Lionel. Believe me, I wish we could. Besides which, she only fixed it last night. She says her must have ripped it deliberate like. Well, I don't see, but anyway, it's her last night, so let's put it behind us. Bloody poems again tomorrow, then, is it, sir? Yes, I'm afraid so. Bloody poems. I am a professionally trained singer. And what do you think Madam is? I think Madam is past it. How dare you? I am the future. I have won prizes, and Madam has presented them at many prestigious competitions. Ha! I've given you her message, Senor. That is all. Thank goodness our association ends tonight. Heaven help the next man who has to battle through a duet with her. What? Oh, I said an hour and a half. What's going on, Arthur? It's only just the hour. Oh, it's you. I suppose you better come in. Quickly, shut the door. I'm not her maid, Mr. Ively. I don't mind helping her with mending, of course I don't. I'm not that sort of person. But it's not what I'm here for. I'm not her maid. I appreciate that, Mrs. Merriman. Now that manager of hers is using the belling to fry her bacon and eggs. Yes, I can smell them. Lovely. Yesterday he sent out, but then he found my little belling and commandeered it. It's for staff only after a late-night play. We work on when the public leave.
It'll be covered in grease.
Well, I suppose it's good for it to get some use. I don't know when the next play will be. Poetry tomorrow.
Poetry, my foot, Mr. Ively. I'm sorry, but there it is.
Ah!
Does he have to practise so loud?
That isn't Signor Paghini. That's Arthur. Arthur, what's happened? She's dead! 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 A beautiful voice silenced forever. My God, she's been stabbed. Call the police. Shut the theatre. Nobody leaves. You have been listening to Death of a Diva, Act 1, The Death. Presented to you by the M-Jam Theatre Company, recorded live to air. The mystery continues tomorrow night in Act 2, Interrogation. Be late at your peril. The M-Jam from London Theatre Players present Death of a Diva, a murder mystery presented in 5 acts. Act 2, Interrogation. Following the murder of celebrated singer Petunia Aramond, Inspector Sands of Scotland Yard begins his investigations at the Regal Theatre. You can use my office, Inspector, through here. Thank you, Mr. Ively. I may as well begin my questioning with you, if you don't mind. Of course not, no. Oh, dear, they're taking her away. I close the door, Constable. We'll know more after the post-mortem, sir. For now, I'd like to ask you a few questions. Yes. Who last saw Miss Aramond alive? Don't say the murderer, sir. I wasn't going to. It was me, and Henning, her manager. She finished the first recital and went to her dressing room to rest before this evening's performance. No one would have any reason to disturb her. Not that I know of. There's a strong smell of bacon and eggs. Yes, I'm sure if you would like... Oh, is it evidence? It does smell nice, sir. Constable, my point is, why? Oh, Mr. Henning was cooking it for Miss Aramond. He would take it in when he woke her. She liked a meal between houses. So this is when he discovered the body? Yes, yes. So he had the plate of food with him? I didn't notice. Understandable. What an end to a once great artiste. Once great? Not still? Well, these days my theatre relies on old people drawn by nostalgia, names that were once big and they think still are, and students studying second-rate poetry for third-rate degrees. I heard her manager saying she's booked up for 6 months. She has had 2 other engagements in the next 6 months, and a lot of free time in between. Not quite the same thing. And now, of course... Oh, it's awful. Thank you, Mr. Ively. Is that all? It'll do for now. Please remain in the theatre. Find out about that plate, Tackett. If he had it or not, and where it is now. Right, sir. And don't eat any. No, sir. Of course not. Of course not. Send in Henning. I'll see him next. He's in a bit of a state. Doc says he ought to have some tranquilizers. He's had a drink meanwhile. Upset's good. He might let something slip. She was a wonderful woman. A true artiste. I heard her once, Royal Opera House. You heard, madam? Not just toffs who go to the opera, you know. No, of course not, Inspector. Those were the glory days. Yes. Bit of a come-down, this place, for someone like Miss Aramond, I mean. The past few years have not been kind. Madam was forced to tour. Too many young people in the profession taking her place at the top, and, well, she tires more quickly than she did.
Oh, it's so unfair, just as things were about to change.
In what way?
Last month, Edison Records cut a trial disc. It arrived this afternoon. It's much less strain for Madam to sing in a recording booth than before an audience, and the acoustics, you see, well, anyway, that is why I went in, to show Madam. I was a little early calling her.
Oh.
But I knew she'd be keen to hear it. It would have been her renaissance. No more touring. She could take her time. And all the people who've never heard of her, or people like you, Inspector, who remember her at her best, would buy the records and discover again her greatness.
So how early were you calling her?
10 minutes, that's all. I left her a light repast on the ring with the heat turned down and the lid over.
I see. Well, that clears up one mystery.
It does?
It does. So you went in 10 minutes early. So she was killed within a 75-minute time frame between 10:15 and 6:30, in fact.
I suppose.
Who brought you the record?
Oh, the doorman. It had been delivered as arranged.
Arranged with the record company?
Of course. They were keen for her approval to proceed.
Any idea who'd want to kill her?
No. No one would. She was beloved. Do you want something, Constable?
The bacon and eggs and stuff.
Oh, I'm afraid you're too late.
Why?
He's eaten it.
It's a grief. It takes people in different ways, Mr. Ively. The poor, beautiful lady, my heart it breaks, but my stomach it rumble. I remember her with each mouthful. That could be evidence, sir.
Of a what?
Never you mind. You come with me, please, Signor...
It's Signor Pagini.
I'll make a note of that.
Oh, dear. Arthur, are you all right? Oh, not now. Signor Pagini, he wishes to speak with you next.
Ah, right then. You come with me, please, sir, and leave that there.
He's eaten Madam's between-house repast. He has. It's the grief, apparently. That man is an uncouth pretender, not fit to breathe Madam's air, let alone sing alongside her.
You are Signor Pagini?
I am he.
How long have you known Miss Arimond?
Too long, a month.
You didn't get on?
Her last duettist quit. I need the money. She was loud, rude, and past it.
I'm surprised you stuck it so long, sir.
Tonight was my last performance. Tomorrow I take up my role at Covent Garden.
A starring role, sir?
Any role in Covent Garden is better than this, Inspector. My career, it is ahead of me. Hers, in the past.
It is now. Do you know who'd want to kill her?
I should imagine many people. And yes, me too. But I did not. I would not give her the satisfaction.
Oh dear, who's left? The doorman, sir, Mrs. Merriman, the wardrobe mistress, and, that's it.
The doorman who received a telephone call and left his post.
Someone could have sneaked in?
Perhaps. Let's have him next.
Please state your name for the record, sir.
Lionel Patrick Holloway.
How long have you worked here, Mr. Holloway?
Eh?
How long have you worked here?
23 years.
You've seen a lot of changes?
Not for the better.
I'm sure. Changes rarely are.
What did you think of Miss Arimond?
Made your life difficult, I expect.
No, not her. She put on airs and graces. She could be a pain, but I know her sort. Frightened she was.
Frightened? Of who? What do you mean?
Not who. Getting old. Her voice wasn't up to it. I've seen actors like that. Past their best and fighting to hide it. Someone did her a mercy, they did.
Tell me about the phone message.
Oh, wanted to talk to Mrs. Merriman, they did. Urgent. So I go and find her, and lo and behold, they've rung off.
How long did it take you to find her?
Took a few minutes. She was in the back dressing room stitching. No more than 5 minutes there and back, though.
He could have hung on.
What did he say exactly?
I got to speak to Mrs. Merriman. Urgent. It's an emergency. Life and death. Of course, I took that with a pinch of salt, but I mean, you got to go along with it just in case.
Did you tell her this?
Yes. She said she hoped it wasn't anything up with her sister.
What about her husband?
A widow.
I see. Known her long?
More than 10 years, I should think. When she came here.
Was she a widow then, sir?
Her husband had just died. That's why she wanted to get back working.
I see. Why here? Funny place to choose. You get regular hours and better pay in a clothing factory, wouldn't you?
Well, I don't know. I think she used to work in theatricals before she got married.
Would you tell me your full name, please?
Agnes Merriman, Mrs.
Very distressing, all this.
Mr. Henning's distressed, blubbing like a baby.
You're not upset?
Well, it's not nice, a murder in the place, but I shan't shed tears for her, Mardy so-and-so.
You didn't get on?
Demanding, you know. Treated me like a maid. I'm not her maid, I'm a professional. I work here in the theatre, not for her.
But you were mending her dress, I understand.
Well, of course, she needed it for tonight, or would have done. But it's a service, not an obligation. The theatre books her as she is. She should have her things in good repair.
And isn't it the second time you mended it?
Bloody cheek, excuse my French. Implied I hadn't done it right. Truth is, she's careless getting it on and off. But I'm not one to complain. I know when to hold my tongue.
Did you see anyone backstage who shouldn't be there? Or anyone who should, acting suspiciously?
No. You any idea who might have done it?
We've theories. V. Dorman told us you got a telephone call.
There was no one there.
What time was this?
About 4:30. Very inconvenient.
Who do you think it was?
Wrong number.
They asked for you.
So Lionel says, silly old fool. Probably misheard.
You were worried it might be about your sister, he says.
Well, no one else would phone me here, and him saying it was urgent, an emergency. Well, I worried something had happened to her.
What happened when you got to the telephone?
Nothing. Gone.
Weren't you still worried?
Well, a doctor or police wouldn't ring off, would they? And they'd have come to the theatre if it was really urgent. Wrong number it must have been.
Yet asking for you.
I told you, Lionel gets confused.
Ah!
He's always doing that.
What the?
It's Mr. Pagini. He's always warming up, as he calls it. Funny enough, I thought it was him earlier when Mr. Henning started screaming.
Inspector, come quickly. It's Signor Pagini.
Told you so.
He's dead.
You have been listening to Death of a Diva, Act 2, Interrogation. Presented to you by the M-Jam Theatre Company. Recorded live to air. The mystery continues tomorrow night in Act 3, A Deadly Encore. Be late at your peril. The M-Jam from London Theatre Players present Death of a Diva, a murder mystery presented in 5 acts. Act 3, A Deadly Encore. Following the murder of Diva Petunia Aramond, Inspector Sands is faced with another death, this time of Signor Pagini. He's dead, all right. You better get the doc back, Tackett. Yes, sir.
This is disastrous. There's a mass murderer on the loose.
Let's not jump to conclusions, Mr. Ively.
It doesn't seem much of a jump. The Regal will never recover from this. Serve him right if he died of indigestion.
Ah, yes. For bacon and eggs.
And tomato and lightly fried bread. All for Madam. And she didn't live to eat it.
And he died eating it.
What are you saying?
Nothing. But, as you say, it was meant for her. The doc will tell us more. For now, please everyone wait in the auditorium. That way, no one passed for body.
So are we just supposed to sit around all night?
We would be here anyway, Mrs. Merriman.
Not without a supper break, not to mention access to the ladies.
Well, I'm sure they wouldn't stop you if
They won't stop me. I know my rights.
As for supper, I couldn't eat a thing. I've got sandwiches in my booth. I suppose I could ask to get 'em. I only made one round.
It's for times like this I have the baby belling, but that's out of bounds, I suppose. Not that I've anything to cook on it.
How can anybody think of food at a time like this? You're as insensitive as Peggy.
I shan't be asking you for ingredients, that's for sure.
What are you implying? Please, let's be calm. I'm sure we won't be here long. He probably died of a heart attack. You were all doom and gloom a minute ago. Maniacs on the loose. I was in shock. But thinking about it, it's much more likely to be natural causes, isn't it? Well, the pathology report will tell us. Wonderful what they can do with a corpse. Do you think he was murdered, sir? I don't believe in coincidences. What do we know about him? Only what he told us. Oh, that goes for all of them, really. But him we can check up on. This is his dressing room. Let's see what we can find. Reminds me of the old days, Mrs. M.
In what way, Lionel?
Well, this is a bit like a play, isn't it? One of those murder mysteries. I can't think why they fell out of fashion.
Ha! Cinema. Too many films.
It might have got decent houses, too. Reminds me of a play we did years back. Murder in a Monastery.
Oh, that was my first one. All them habits I had to make out of potato sacks.
There was a monk stabbed, I think. Then the inspector comes.
I can't say I remember the plot.
No. Well, long time ago. Pagini's really called Fred Potts. About as Italian as my wife's handbag. Why did he lie? Oh, theatrical types. Not unusual to pretend to be something better fitting the image. However, it's food for thought. Talking of food. Dr. Farley. Any joy? Precious little in this job. I can tell you the food didn't kill him, though. That's what you want to know, isn't it? It is. Well, that's a relief. Heart attack. But brought on by an excess of dyslinium tablets. What? Prescribed heart medication. One to be taken a day, after meals. Oh, that's probably why he ate. Oh, fair play to the man. So he took one too many? He took 17 too many. Just the right amount to induce fatality. Could be an accident, sir? Tommy rot. I'll catch up with him at the morgue. May know more once I've cut him up. There's no getting around it, Tackett. We do have a mass murderer. And he, or she, is sitting out there, like butter wouldn't melt.
That's it. I'm going to the ladies.
Well, if you're moving, I'm going to get my sandwiches. Well, I need to telephone Edison's before they hear about Madam's death. They own the last recording of her voice. Look, I'm sure we should all stay here. Indeed. Please sit down. But I shan't keep you a moment, madam. Everyone can go home after my constable takes down your addresses. Oh, well, that's a relief.
I should hope so.
Do the press know? Has a statement been made? What happened to Signor Pagini, Inspector? It was an accident, surely? I mean, surely not. Well, we'll know tomorrow, Mr. Ively, but it looks like natural causes. He had a bad heart. Did he? Poor chap. It must have been the shock of Madam's death. Or all that greasy bacon.
I must insist on
Tackett. Take Mrs. Merriman's details first, so she can, go. Sir?
Well, you can take them on the way.
Inspector. Mr. Holloway, I need to talk to you, urgently. I've remembered something.
I know who did it.
You have been listening to Death of a Diva, Act 3, A Deadly Encore. Presented to you by the M-Jam Theatre Company, recorded live to air. The mystery continues tomorrow night in Act 4. Repeat performance. Be late. At your peril. The M-Jam from London Theatre Players present Death of a Diva, a murder mystery presented in 5 acts. Act 4, Repeat Performance. The suspects have been sent home, while Inspector Sands turns over the facts as he tries to work out who murdered Petunia Aramond and Signor Pagini, alias Fred Potts, and why. And how? I wonder why Lionel has gone off with the inspector. I've no idea. May I use your telephone? Yes, of course. It's through there. Strange. I don't think they arrested him, you know. Went willingly. Pray I have the number. Ah, yes, thank goodness. What is the time in New York, do you know? I've no idea. You're phoning New York from here? Of course not. How could I? I'm phoning through a telegram. Don't worry. I'll put 2pence in the tin. Yes, I'm sorry. Drink? I keep some for the long nights. When we used to have long nights. No, thank you. I'm fine. Hello? Hello? Yes, I do. Right, that's better. Some privacy. Now, what is it you want to tell me, Mr. Holloway?
Well, I didn't recognise him at first. Then the penny dropped when I remembered murder at Monk Hall. Well, people change, and that fancy accent, but it was him.
Fred Potts.
Fred who?
Well, that's his real name, isn't it?
Is it?
Well, what did he call himself then? Surely not Signor Pagini.
Why would he call himself that? Who are you talking about? Arthur Herring.
You mean Henning?
Well, that's what he calls himself now.
Not a surprise, sir. Half a herring. Sorry, sir. You said a fancy accent.
Well, yes, all la-di-da. Wasn't la-di-da then, I can tell you. Straight out of the East End he was. Assistant stage manager with occasional walk-ons. Only lasted a month. Sacked for stealing, I think. Well, probably bears a grudge.
Well, that's very interesting, but I don't quite see how it helps. Why would he murder his star turn? And why kill Pagini?
Well, I can't tell you everything. What a shame. Point is, he's copied the play, Murder at Monk Hall.
Has he now? Go on.
Well, cast your mind back about 10 years or so, I suppose, more or less, give or take a few days, and picture the stage, a belfry, a lone monk pulling on a rope.
Brother Simon, how did you get in here without being seen?
I climbed the bell rope, brother, but before you started ringing it. I have been here the whole time, waiting my chance.
Chance? Chance for what?
Chance to give you this.
Ah! 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 Ah!
And he stabs him with the dagger. I was on thunder. So, he shinned up a bell rope, did he? Killed his golden goose, then shinned down again, taking bell and bell rope with him, so we've been none the wiser. We're dealing with a criminal mastermind here, Tackett. Eh?
I suppose I better speak to him, though. He hasn't exactly been straight with us. Get him in. He's not gone. I think I saw him going to Ively's office.
He used a stage rope. Whoosh, straight down to the stage, and away he goes, no one the wiser. Now, the monk What he does is...
Yes, thank you, Mr. Holloway. That'll do for now. You can go home. We'll talk again in the morning.
You do get it, though. All them monks looked the same in potato sacks.
Thank heavens. Tomorrow, Mr. Holloway. Tomorrow. Where's Henning?
Letting him finish his call, sir. Said he'd only be 5 minutes.
It's late. I want to go home, but
I thought you'd want to see this first, sir. Report from a doc. Sergeant Graham had it sent over.
Ah, right. Interesting.
It seems like Pagini ingested his pills, dissolved in a mixture of coffee and brandy, about an hour or two before demise. Now, where did he get them?
Surprised he was hungry.
Well, apparently he wouldn't have felt a thing until the last few minutes.
I'll stow it for now. Let's see our fishy Mr. Henning.
I'm off, Mr. Ively.
Right-o, Lionel. You staying on?
I thought I ought to while the police are here.
They want us back at 10 a.m. Midnight soon.
Yes, I'll go soon either way.
Don't let me keep you, Lionel.
I'm just going to get me things from me booth and I'll be off. Good night, sir. Terrible business.
Yes. Good night. I need a drink.
Lied? What do you mean?
About who you are.
You know who I am. Anyone can vouch for me. Mr. Herring, isn't it?
Oh. How did you find out?
You're not denying it?
No point. I'd like to.
Why? Because I'm ashamed of Arthur Herring.
Sorry, sir.
I grew up in the sort of place one gets into trouble with the police. I found a job here.
I suppose Ively recognised me, did he? Well, I owed money to people who'd break my arms if I didn't pay them, and I stupidly stole from petty cash. Ively caught me and sacked me, naturally. He didn't call the law. He's a kind man. Partly why I persuaded Miss Harriman to appear here to help him out. At least he got some bums on seats, as they say. Did he recognise me? No, actually. It was Holloway.
The doorman?
Well, I'm surprised. Ignored me the whole time. That sort never does acknowledge you until you've been here a year or so and proved yourself. He knows all about you stealing, of which I was, and am, very ashamed. I made something of myself, and I've been straight ever since. Do you remember the play you worked on? My one and only? Well, not really, no. It was in a monastery, I think. Load of tosh. How's it going with the record company? Edison's? Well, they seem to think the records are going to sell better than if Madam was still alive. Isn't that awful? They're such ghouls. She was a great, you know. Well, yes, you do know. You heard her. I wish she'd lived to see her renaissance.
Tomorrow at 10, Mr. Henning.
Oh, yes. Is that all?
Yes, sir. Good night.
Good night.
But, sir, that's motive, the record deal. He's going to get more money now she's dead.
He didn't do it.
But, sir, who else gets anything out of it?
She was good, you know. Must be nearly 30 years ago when I heard her. I wasn't much more than a kid. But I could tell. 10 prompt, constable. And bring the cuffs.
You know who did it then, sir?
Yes, I do now. Monks look alike in potato sacks. But they don't look like monks at all, in ordinary clothes, do they?
Sir?
You have been listening to Death of a Diva, Act 4, Repeat Performance. Presented to you by the M-Jam Theatre Company, recorded live to air. The mystery concludes in 2 days' time, in Act 5, The Last Performance. Be late at your peril.
The M-Jam from London Theatre Players present Death of a Diva, a murder mystery presented in 5 acts. If you have followed closely the previous 4 acts, you do not need me to tell you that Inspector Sands is ready to make an arrest. He is sure he knows who killed Diva Petunia Aramon and her fellow singer, Signor Pagini. He thinks he has the proof. It is 10 a.m. and the suspects gather in the theatre once more. I haven't seen the place this full in a long time.
Pity it's policemen, not paying customers.
Quite. The sooner this horrible business is behind us, the better. For Regal can't afford to remain dark for long.
I gave him a tip last night.
Yes, I saw you go with the inspector.
Thought you'd been arrested, we did.
Well, I wouldn't say that, but...
Familiar faces, Mr. Ively. I'll say no more.
What do you mean?
Careless talk and all that? It's evidence now.
I hope he won't keep us long. I missed my bus last night and I didn't get a wink of sleep.
If I may have everyone's attention.
About time.
Briefly, I'm going to go over the events surrounding the 2 deaths yesterday. I shall address each of you in turn, so allowing you and others to correct me if I'm mistaken in any details. For ease, I shall go from right to left of how you're sitting now. Mr. Henning, Mrs. Merriman, Mr. Holloway, Mr. Ively, and...
Who are you?
Tony.
Tony?
I'm reading a poem about fish.
You what?
Oh, you must be Anthony Nettleton.
Yes.
I left a message for you. I'm afraid the poetry is cancelled owing to some murders.
Will you be rearranging?
I hope to. Perhaps you could get...
If you don't mind, sir. Constable, please escort this gentleman from the premises.
Yes, sir. Look, I don't want to intrude, I'm sure. I'll be in touch, Mr. Nettleton. Don't leave a message with Sandra. She's jealous of my talent. Oh.
For goodness sake.
I'm sorry about that. Right. First, I shall address Arthur Henning, alias Herring.
Aha!
Herring? You're Arthur Herring. That's right, Mr. Ively. The young man who came to work here 10 years ago and left under a cloud.
Good gracious! Stole money?
I did, for which I apologise again.
It's all water under the bridge.
I would never have guessed.
I'm older, stouter, and lost most of my hair. It's no wonder you didn't realise. I did.
If that's who you meant. Oh, it makes me go cold. Why did he do it?
He didn't. But Mr. Henning was clearly in sight of someone the whole time.
Not if he went up a stage rope. We'd think he was round the back, but he'd be up there, where he stabbed her. Oh, and down again before you can say Jack Robinson.
Climb a stage rope? Me? But you could have killed Signor Pagini, poisoned the food.
Aha! I didn't.
No, you did not.
Hang on a minute, you can't let him off everything.
I can, Mr. Holloway, if he's innocent. The bacon and eggs were not poisoned. But Pagini wasn't murdered. You said natural causes. A white lie. He was murdered.
Aha!
Mr. Holloway, please. An overdose of heart medication mixed into a drink.
Oh, that could be how he took his medicine, though. I read a story in my true romance where he ends it all because she won't marry him by mixing his medicine with his pint of stout. Fortunately, he threw up all over her and she changed her mind. I like to think they lived happily ever after.
It was murder, but not at the hands of Mr. Henning. Now I turn to you, Mrs. Merriman.
Don't point the finger at me, I hope.
You were in the back room sewing. Mr. Holloway comes to you with a message. You go with him and find the back door open and no one on the phone.
Which is when they sneaked in, obviously. It's not one of us at all.
You said it was Mr. Henning a minute ago.
Well, I thought it was then, but if it's not, it must be somebody who sneaked in. I mean, it stands to reason.
There was nobody on the phone. Somebody's playing a hoax. Seems to me you should be following that up, Inspector, before blaming innocent women.
I'm not blaming you because I have the greatest defence of all.
You do?
Yes, innocence. If you are innocent, you have nothing to fear from British justice.
Oh, I'm not sure about that.
And you're no better than you ought to be.
Please, the point is,
You went back to complete the sewing and then came down for your break, where you were present in view for most of the time that Miss Armand was alone. At this point you remain a possible, if unlikely, suspect. I did not do it. Then, as you say, you've nothing to fear. Moving on. Mr. Holloway.
Yes.
Would you mind describing again what happened?
Well, the phone rang, so I answered it.
No, sir, not the phone. I've covered that with Mrs. Merriman. What happened after Miss Armand came off stage?
Oh, well, she went upstairs, and Senior Pagini went into his dressing room, the smaller one on this floor. Oh, I didn't see him come out again, but I was clearing up, sweeping, picking up sweet wrappers, that sort of thing. Then Herring starts fiddling about with a belling, which he's broken somehow.
What? That came out of my own money. Mr. Ively, please tell him.
I did not break it. I commented on how long it takes to heat up, that's all. I cooked Madame's snack perfectly satisfactorily, but I knew I needed to start in good time.
Where were you when the alarm went up, Mr. Holloway?
Oh, I was back in my booth. I was going to have me sandwich when he sets off his screaming.
Thank you.
Read it, then?
Yes. Mr. Ively, how long have you been manager of a Regal Theatre?
23 years.
As long as Mr. Holloway.
I came 2 months before.
Mr. Ively?
Yes, Lionel was here. I took over from Mr. Stebbings. There's a board of trustees, you see, and when he retired I was lucky enough to get the position.
You enjoy it?
Well, very much. Theatre's in my blood. My mother is Nellie Barone. Not a name remembered now, perhaps, but a good actress. She gave up when I was born. I feel she's always regretted it.
I don't want to talk out of turn, but is this getting us anywhere, Inspector?
I think so. There's been a lot of people, not who we believed them to be. Pagini, alias Fred Potts, Henning, formerly Mr. Herring, but both with honest reasons for the subterfuge. Miss Armand had a secret identity, too, of a sort.
What do you mean? Everyone knows Petunia Armand. She's been famous for decades.
Mr. Stebbings is 80, you know. All his wits about him, though. I spoke to him on the phone earlier.
You spoke to Mr. Stebbings? Why?
He confirmed what I thought I remembered about Miss Armand.
What does he know about Madame?
Miss Armand was married briefly, although a divorce was hurried through when her husband was caught philandering with various girls in the chorus. He was a singer too, though not in her class. They sang a duet together in a performance that I saw many years ago. She made sure his musical career was ruined. A woman scorned and all that. Patrick, somebody I remembered. His face kept niggling away at my memory. Then I realized.
Oh, this is ridiculous, Inspector.
The ex-husband, ex-singer, came to Stebbings for a job. Knew him, apparently. Stebbings felt sorry for him. Agreed not to say a word about the man's past, shame and all that. And as he retired a few months later, the secret never came out. Now look, I was not appointed by Mr. Stebbings. I was appointed by the board. Lionel Patrick Holloway. I'm arresting you.
No, stop him!
Not so fast, sir. We thought you might try bolting. Arresting you for the murders of Petunia Armand and Frederick Potts. You do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention when questioned something which you later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence.
Well, I knew it.
I hear you're ready to talk now, Holloway.
Well, I might as well, eh? You got lucky, Inspector. If you hadn't seen me when you was a kid, what are the chances?
It's not just that. Pagini's pills were mixed with coffee and brandy. You bring sandwiches and a flask of coffee with you every night, don't you? Easy to add some brandy and share it with him as you discussed old times.
Old times? I'd never met him before.
But he recognised you. Quite the connoisseur of Covent Garden and its history. Idolised Miss Armand, which is why the reality of her was such a disappointment to him. No doubt you were flattered he recognised you from an old programme photograph, until you realised he'd be the first to point the finger when you killed her.
I thought he'd keel over there and then when I gave him the pills. But they took ages. He was still alive when she died. The stupid fool never put two and two together after all. Yeah, but he would have done. I had no choice.
Why did you kill her after all these years? Because as soon as Mr. Ivory said she was booked, it all came back. The humiliation, the disgrace. She took everything I had.
All right, so I wasn't faithful. Divorce me then. But that wasn't enough. I was reduced to working as a doorman because the only job I could get was from a man who pitied me.
You didn't have to stay in the area?
Yes, I did. I hoped, you see, that after a while she might relent. Or at least the managers might. I had to be near, on hand. I didn't want them to forget me. I spent 2 years going round asking if they'd give me a chance. Constant rejection. Then I did want them to forget me. I hid away. This place became a habit. I actually thought I was happy here. Until she walked back into my life.
Why the dagger? Rather messy?
Well, that wasn't planned.
Tell me exactly what happened. In your own words.
Full confession.
Why not? Cooperate. You might get life instead of a noose.
Well, we both know I won't. But I will tell you. Why not? At first, I thought I'd put up with it, you know, her coming here. Maybe even try to bury the hatchet. 20-odd years after all. But she breezes in and looks straight through me. Didn't recognise me from Adam. I was the doorman. Then, later, I saw her glance my way, and a slow look of surprise passed across her face. And then it turned to a look of contempt and satisfaction, triumph at having brought me so low. That's when I knew I had to do it, that she deserved to die. I played out the telephone farce so Mrs. Merriman would see the door open and later assume the killer was an outsider. That's why I tore the dress so she'd be in the back room where I could get to her quicker. I didn't want somebody coming by and shutting it. Then when I realised who Herring was, I couldn't resist trying to implement him. Stupid, really. Gilding the lily. Anyway, that was the plan. After the performance, I invited Pagini. He collected all the old opera paraphernalia. Real obsessive he was, and he'd worked me out. I laughed it off, said I'd been ill, had to quit singing. Well, he'd had enough of her too. We talked about his new job coming up, and I suggested a toast. I put a bit of brandy in the coffee. I knew all about his heart, kept asking me if I thought it would hold him back. Simple matter to slip the pills into the flask. Got them from his dressing room when he was on stage. Then I went to see her.
Oh, it's you. You better come in, quickly.
Don't worry. No one saw me.
What do you want? Money, I suppose. Well, I've none for you.
You took all the money I had. Oh, you didn't need it. Not then. Things ain't so rosy now, are they?
I asked you what you want. Arthur will be here in a moment. I could have you dismissed for harassment. We have nothing to say to each other.
You haven't changed. You took everything then, and you'd like to do the same again.
You slept with that little hussy. You lied to me about it, and I believed you. Then I caught you together, canoodling. I owe you nothing, Patrick, and you got your just deserts.
You're hard. If I had any doubts, they're gone now.
Doubts? What are you talking about? I've had enough of this.
I'm the one that's had enough. I was wearing gloves because I planned to strangle her, cut that voice of hers off once and for all. A fitting finish to her career. But she pulled back. She guessed the danger, I suppose. Grabbed a paper knife from the dressing table, and I caught her hand in the nick of time. She'd have stabbed me. Then she sort of stumbled forward. Accidentally, I swear, and the knife just went into her.
You're saying you changed your mind, then?
No. I'm not making excuses. I'm just being accurate, for the record. If she hadn't fallen on it, I'd have wrung her neck like an old turkey. But fate took over. She moaned, and then she didn't. Silenced at last. Oh, I did the world a service.
What's the matter?
I shan't hang, Inspector. I'm going out like Pagini did. I know how long those tablets take now, don't I? I managed to take enough while you were pontificating on stage. What? It can't be. I can hear her. She's dead! You're dead!
A few weeks ago, Miss Armand made a record. It's the only one now. Apparently, what with her death and everything, it's going to sell like hot cakes.
What do you mean?
I mean, Madame Petunia Armand will be remembered. Lionel Patrick Holloway will not. Rather than fading away touring second-rate theatres, she's going out in a blaze of glory. Thanks to you.
No!
She's even taken your final victory from you, hasn't she? Doc!
You cut that fine. Help me roll up his sleeve, Constable.
Yes, Doctor.
There. A shot of this'll bring him back to you in an hour or so. Then he can face justice. Lucky you had me standing by, on the off chance, eh?
Well, we never found the pills. I thought he may try and take the easy way out.
I'll arrange for him to be taken to the hospital. No doubt you want to send some of your fellows along too. Keep an eye on him.
Yes, I've arranged an escort. Thank you, Doctor. Come on, Tackett. We'd better get Mr. Henning's record back to him.
Ah, yes, about that, sir. You haven't scratched it, have you?
No, sir. It's another copy he got hold of. He said it's for you, with his compliments.
Really? Well, how thoughtful.
Well, come on then, Tackett. We'll go and listen to it, all the way through, from the beginning.
Sir?
Or we could go down the pub.
Yes, sir. I think I shall keep the record in a safe place. Rely on my memories of that day long ago, when I saw Madam and Patrick Holloway sing their last duet. You have been listening to Death of a Diva, Act 5, The Last Performance. Presented to you by the M-Jam Theatre Company and recorded live to air. The mystery was sent from the brain of Matthew Jones direct to your ears by the wonders of radio. If you have enjoyed this, please subscribe. Join us again soon for another thrilling mystery. Be late at your peril!